What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on the Fearless Nick YouTube channel, and in today's video I'll be going through some early AFL trade rumours in the lead up to the 2023 AFL trade period. So if you guys go on to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like, share and subscribe, as I really do enjoy making these trade rumour videos, and I'll probably release one more trade rumours video just suggesting, maybe targets that your club might have. But anyways, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight on into the trade rumours. So in case you've been living under a rock, I'd say for the last 2 months and a bit now, you will know that Damien Hardwick is now, officially the new coach of the Gold Coast Suns for season 2023 and beyond. And ever since then, there's been quite a bit of speculation and sort of murmuring behind the scenes that potentially Dustin Martin and Dion Prestia could be joining the Gold Coast Suns for season 2023. Look, in all honesty, I'm not really surprised, to be honest. These rumours have come up. I think recently Dusty was actually seen having coffee or something with Dimmer up at the Gold Coast, and I think that's when the trade rumours really started to hit their peak with this one. And Dion Prestia as well has been quite heavily linked, like I said, to going back up to Gold Coast. Now, I thought I needed to address this because I haven't really spoken too much about the trade rumours as of late, and Dustin Martin seems to be quite a popular name this year, especially going up to Gold Coast. Obviously, as we all know, Dusty is very, very close with Damien Hardwick. I think they're probably very close to best friends. Obviously, that has really started a lot of murmur and a lot of rumour about Dusty heading up to Gold Coast to join Dimmer at the Suns. And recently, as of late, Dion Prestia has also been murmured to potentially joining Dimmer up at Gold Coast as well. Obviously, we all know Dion Prestia did actually start his career at Gold Coast. He was actually drafted by the Suns back, I think, in 2010 or 2011, somewhere around there. Look, the only way I can see this potentially happening, or even just one of these players moving from Richmond back to Gold Coast, is if Gold Coast, offer Richmond something absolutely massive. And to be honest, I can't really see Gold Coast offering too much for these two players. Realistically, I don't think Gold Coast consider, the midfield as sort of a weakness for them. I think Gold Coast midfield is actually pretty good, to be honest. They've got Tug Miller, Matt Rao, Noah Anderson. They've got all these players in there. In all fairness, I think there's actually a legitimate reason for someone like a Dion Prestia to potentially move back up to Gold Coast. I think it was reported a few days ago now that Prestia would preferably like to end his career up in Queensland, whether that be Gold Coast, Brisbane, one of those two sides. So, there is a bit of smoke here, and, when there's smoke, there's fire. From what I know, I think both Dusty and Prestia are contracted, so, Richmond can technically say no, and, that's the end of it. In reality, though, I don't think this will happen. I know it is coming from a Richmond fan, and, I don't want this to happen, definitely. I want both Dusty and Prestia to end their careers at Richmond, obviously. But I guess this is all sparked from the fact that, Damien Hardwick has obviously joined Gold Coast, and he was pretty close with a lot of the Richmond players. And the fact that Richmond are sort of in this, transition period where they're not really rebuilding, but they're transitioning from, their premiership superstars to some of this younger, less experienced talent to try and guide them into the future. So I guess considering, Richmond's position right now, they may look to trade off some experienced players. Realistically, I don't think this deal will happen. I expect Dusty and Prestia to both be wearing the yellow and black again next season. But the other rumour that's come out between these two clubs, as to potentially why they're discussing a potential trade this off-season, is former Richmond player Mabior Chol is speculated and rumoured to potentially request a trade back to Richmond this offseason, which I couldn't really believe at first. Like, when I first heard this rumour, I was like, surely there's no way. Like, as I remember, Mabior Chol left Richmond for opportunity reasons. And I think there was also a bit of family reasons as well as to why he moved from Richmond to Gold Coast. I think, from memory, I think Chol is actually from Queensland. Like I said, this took me by absolute surprise when I first heard this about a month or two ago now. Yeah, I didn't think Mabior Chol was actually even considering a move from Gold Coast, since he did go up there, you know, for family reasons and all that. When you look at Gold Coast forward line, I think you actually have to question, where does Chol fit in all of this? And, you know, if you've paid close attention to Richmond this season, like I have, obviously being a Richmond fan, the forward line, in particular, the key forward department, has definitely been, an area of concern for the Tigers this season, definitely. Going into next year, the key forward department is going to be a bit of a question. Obviously, we're going to get Tom Lynch back. We're probably going to draft, you know, a young key forward who's probably not going to develop for the next couple of years. So when you look at it like that, it actually makes sense. You know, Mabior Chol, who's potentially out of favour at Gold Coast, probably not going to get much of a look next year, especially with Jed Walter coming through, who looks like he could probably play round 1 next year for Gold Coast as well. But there is a slim chance that Mabior Chol may end up back at Richmond at the end of this season, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And to be honest, if this happened, I would be rapt, to be honest. I'd love to have Chol back in the side right now, considering, like I said, Richmond, we're desperate for a key forward. And, you know, Mabior Chol, I think he's 26, 27. He's in the prime of his career, and he's pretty versatile as well. Obviously, because he played at Richmond, I've seen him firsthand, and he's pretty versatile. He can play forward and ruck, and I think he'd genuinely be a great fit in our forward line as well. Obviously, with Jack Riewoldt leaving, Tom Lynch is probably going to need a bit of help next year. Do I think this will happen? Maybe. I think there's a chance Mabior Chol ends up back at Richmond next year, but to be on the safe side, I'll put it at a 50-50. Like, I think there's a chance, but I think there's also a chance nothing happens and he stays at Gold Coast next year. But definitely one to keep a lookout for this offseason, Mabior Chol. So I guess now I'll move on to some of the other, big trade rumours that have been murmured now for a little while. I'll start off with possibly the biggest fish out of all the other trade rumours this season. And that is, of course, Brody Grundy, who has, pretty much officially told Melbourne that he is preferably wanting a trade out of the Demons this season. Obviously, we know, it was only just last season that Brody Grundy actually joined the Demons, I think on a 5-year deal or something like that. And only one season into that deal, and it already looks like Brody Grundy is pretty much out the door and looking to explore a third club in a matter of 3 seasons, which is absolutely crazy. I can't even remember a player who's done that, to be honest. So by all reports, it does look like it was originally Port Adelaide and Sydney who were the 2 most interested clubs in Grundy this off-season. However, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. And since then, after meeting up with Grundy, I think before the final started, Port Adelaide have now officially ruled themselves out of the Brody Grundy race, which now actually leaves Sydney as the preferred and probably most likely destination for Brody Grundy this off-season. Like I said, this probably makes quite a bit of sense. Obviously, the Swans, they're in desperate need of a ruck. Tom Hickey, as we know, has only just retired. He was probably on his last legs as well. So even if Tom Hickey hadn't retired, I think Sydney would still make a pretty big play for Brody Grundy. Look, I think the most interesting part of this deal is what will Sydney have to give Melbourne in order to get this deal done. Now, personally, I think something around what Melbourne gave Collingwood last year for Brody Grundy is probably about right. That pick between pick 20 and maybe 25, somewhere between there, I think is about right for Brody Grundy. I expect this deal to get done. It just depends what Sydney are going to have to give for Grundy, because obviously Grundy is contracted, so he can't just move, for free. It's going to cost Sydney something. So we'll wait and see what that is. But I fully expect Brody Grundy to join the Sydney Swans this offseason, and remarkably join a third club in a matter of 3 seasons. We'll move on now to another very speculated trade rumour that's been going around for quite a while, and I think it's a pretty much guarantee that this is going to happen, and that is, of course, Ben McKay, the North Melbourne key defender who I believe is a free agent this season. I think he's an unrestricted or restricted free agent, one of the two. He's also pretty much told North Melbourne that he will be exploring his options ahead of the 2024 AFL season. Reportedly, it was Essendon, Sydney, Port Adelaide and Hawthorn as the 4 most interested clubs to acquire McKay's services. Look, from what I can gather, I think it's between Essendon and Sydney, who are the 2 most interested teams in Ben McKay this offseason. Obviously, we know Essendon, they desperately need a key back this offseason. Obviously, their defence was absolutely ripped apart, later in the season. So they'll be looking to, bolster their key defence this offseason. Where do I think Ben McKay will end up this offseason? Well, like I said, I think it's between Essendon and Sydney, the 2 clubs most interested in. Reportedly, Ben McKay is happy going to either side. He doesn't mind whether he stays in Victoria or goes to New South Wales. Look, this is pretty much set in stone, I think, right now. Ben McKay, it's been rumoured, like I said, since I think late June or early July, that he would be leaving the North Melbourne Footy Club. And I think this is a guarantee to happen. I think Ben McKay will depart North Melbourne at the end of the season. So I guess we'll now move on to the Port Adelaide trio. So if you don't know already, it's been recently reported that all 3 of Asava Radagalier, Brandon Zerkvatcher and Jordan Sweet have all requested trades to the Port Adelaide Footy Club this off-season. Of course, all 3 players, I think, a trade will need to be facilitated for all 3 of them. I don't think Port Adelaide can just sign them, considering they aren't free agents. So, like I said, a trade will have to be facilitated for all 3 of these players. The interesting thing here is Port Adelaide, after doing the Jason Horne-Francis and Junior Rioli trade last year, they are currently without a top 30 pick. So they do not have a draft pick in the top 30. Their first pick, as it currently stands right now in the draft, is pick 37, which by itself is probably only really enough to get maybe one of these guys. Asava Radagalier, I'm assuming Geelong would probably want something between pick 20 and pick 26, pick 27, something around there. And I think Essendon would probably want something similar for Brandon Zerkvatcher. And then I think the Bulldogs, they won't have to fight too hard for Jordan Sweet, I don't think. They could probably just trade pick 37 for Jordan Sweet. That's probably all it's going to cost. Do they do some draft pick swaps and try and get higher up the draft without trading anyone? I think that's probably the most likely scenario. They try and do some draft swaps. Or they, like I said, they try and move a couple of players out, which would, I think, be more interesting. Maybe they try and trade out, a Travis Boak. Maybe they try and trade out, a Scott Lysette or someone like that to try and get some draft picks to try and accommodate for Asava Radagalier, Brandon Zerkvatcher and Jordan Sweet. Do I think all 3 of these players will get done? Yes, but I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how Port Adelaide get all of these deals done, considering, like I said, they are currently without a top 30 pick. So, it's going to be interesting to see what Port Adelaide do on this front. We'll move on now to a couple of more, I guess sort of minor trade rumours that have sort of been speculated or maybe happening behind the scenes. The first one I want to discuss is Jade Gresham from St Kilda. who has reportedly not been offered a contract ahead of the 2024 season. Gresham, I think he is actually a free agent, so I guess he could move to any club of his desire. It's reported that Essendon and also Carlton are interested in Gresham this offseason, although it looks like Essendon are slightly ahead in terms of the race to get Gresham. Look, to be honest, this really took me by surprise. I thought Jade Gresham would be one of the first players to receive a contract before the end of the season for St Kilda, because I actually thought he was, I at least think he's a best 22 player for St Kilda. I'm pretty sure he is. So I'm very surprised that St Kilda have not offered Gresham a contract. This has really actually taken me back, to be honest. Reportedly, as it stands, St Kilda have offered donuts for Jade Gresham so far. So that probably speaks volumes that Gresham is probably going to leave St Kilda at the end or during this upcoming trade period. Look, to be honest, I think out of Essendon and Carlton, I think Essendon is probably the better fit, because Carlton, they do have a lot of, these small mid-forward types, such as, Owies, Durden, Motlop. They've got plenty of those small forward types, the Blues. So I really don't think they need Gresham. I think he's definitely a much, much better fit for a team like Essendon than he is for Carlton. So I do expect Jade Gresham to find a new home during this 2023 AFL trade period. The next trade rumour that I've heard that has been, bubbling away under the surfaces, that hasn't really been talked about, but to be honest, it's one of the more interesting rumours to talk about, to be honest, and that is Tom Doedee from the Adelaide Crows, who has reportedly been offered up to a 4-year deal by the Brisbane Lions ahead of the 2024 AFL season. Now, obviously, we know Tom Doedee this year did do his ACL in the middle of the home and away season. Obviously, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. It's reported that he's been offered a 2-year deal by the Crows, but according to some reports, it's not to Tom Doedee's liking the 2-year deal on the table from Adelaide. And Doedee himself has come out and said that he preferably wants to stay at Adelaide, considering obviously the great season that the Crows had this year, very nearly making the final. Look, to be honest, I don't really know what to make of this one. Doedee himself has come out and said that he wants to stay at Adelaide, but if that Brisbane deal is really too good to refuse, I think it's 4 years at like 700,000 or something like that. This is definitely a rumour to watch, to be honest. I'm very interested to see which way this one goes, because like I said, Doedee wants to stay at Adelaide, but if that Brisbane deal is too good to refuse and Adelaide are not going to up the ante on their deal, Doedee might genuinely request a trade to the Brisbane Lions this offseason. So keep an eye out for this one. The next trade rumour that I wanted to discuss in today's video is a trade rumour that I think we've all heard at some point this season. And I tell you what, a couple of months ago, this was quite the popular trade topic, I tell you what. And that is, of course, the fan favourite himself, Bailey Smith, who was reportedly being circled and targeted by both Geelong and Hawthorn ahead of this year's trade period. But obviously, a lot has happened since that trade rumour broke about a month or two ago now. And reportedly, Bailey Smith's manager came out and completely shut this one down and said that Bailey Smith is actually contracted for one more season at the Bulldogs. He will stick out his contract for one more season at the Western Bulldogs, and I guess we'll see what happens from there. But Bailey Smith's manager has pretty much just squashed this rumour pretty quickly, which I thought was pretty good. We don't want, false information, going around the internet, do we? But unfortunately, that's what trade rumours do sometimes. But bottom line, Bailey Smith is not going anywhere. It was just a bit of speculation and a bit of BS, I think, from some of the reporters trying to get a headline. But Bailey Smith himself will not be going anywhere this offseason. He's contracted at the Dogs for one more season. But keep your eye out for Bailey Smith next year, because I tell you what, if things go the same way for the Dogs that they did this year, next year, then I tell you what, this could be a live chance next year, considering, like I said, Bailey Smith, he's only got one more year left on his contract. So I tell you what, next year, this could genuinely be a live chance to happen. The next trade rumor that I wanted to discuss in today's video is a trade rumor that I don't think's actually been talked about for a little while now, but I thought I had to give a little bit of an update on it, and that is, of course, Devin Robertson from the Brisbane Lions, who, as we all know, famously got his shirt ripped off in the Brisbane Collingwood game at Marvel Stadium. And I tell you what, he went from the biggest nobody to the biggest, all-Australian icon in a matter of minutes. But it was reported, I think, a couple of weeks ago now that the West Coast Eagles had actually put forward quite an enticing offer for the young Brisbane Lion midfielder. It was reported that West Coast had offered Robertson a 4-year deal worth up to about $700,000 a season, which in my mind is actually pretty generous, considering Robertson, he's not really a solidified best 22 player at the Lions. He is getting, regular game time now, but to be honest, I think that's only because Will Ashcroft did do his ACL. But I tell you what, this rumour does have a lot of legs, considering Robertson is actually from Western Australia. So with all that said, this is still a chance to happen. Even though Robertson would be moving to a team like West Coast, and obviously we all know where West Coast are at the moment. West Coast, they're in the middle of a rebuild. They're trying to rebuild and recoup their list as fast as possible. But once again, I think this one's pretty similar to the Bailey Smith incident, although nothing's been said in a while about this one. But we can't officially rule this one out, considering Robertson himself and or his manager have not shut this rumour down at all. So that tells me there's something bubbling away here. Robertson's probably considering his future. But as of this year, do I think Robertson will move? I don't think so. I think Dev Robertson will stay at Brisbane at least for one more season. But once again, keep a lookout for this one as well. This could be another rumour potentially for next season, especially if Robertson hasn't cemented himself as a best 22 player. The next trade rumour that I wanted to discuss really isn't a rumour. This is another confirmed trade to potentially happen ahead of the 2023 AFL trade period, and that is Shane McAdam, the young Adelaide Crows small forward, or mid forward that is, who has, officially requested a trade to the Melbourne Footy Club this off-season. McAdam himself didn't have the greatest year in 2023. He was sort of squeezed out of that Adelaide side in favour of Isaac Rankin and Josh Rochelle this season. Although there were some reports that McAdam himself had actually been offered a 3-year deal by the Adelaide Crows as early as early September. But he has obviously rejected that contract offer and, like I said, has officially requested a trade to the Melbourne Footy Club. I don't like this move from Melbourne and from McAdam. I don't think it's a great fit. Yes, I know, I understand the move from Adelaide part. Obviously Adelaide, they've got quite a strong forward line with the likes of Rankin and Rochelle playing that small forward role. So I get that bit, but why would you request a trade to Melbourne? Like, Melbourne have got so many, players in Shane McAdam's position. They've got Cozzy Pickett, they've got Cade Chandler, they've got, so many other guys in this position as well. Alex Neil-Bullen as well. They've got so many players, Melbourne, just these mid-forward types. And I don't think they need another one unless, Melksham retires. I don't think they need another one. But although I myself don't think it's a great move in terms of Melbourne and what Melbourne need, I think Melbourne more specifically need a key forward rather than a small or mid forward. I do fully expect Shane McAdam to be at the Melbourne Footy Club next year, and Does that trade involve James Jordan? I don't really know. Potentially, but I think that's unlikely. I think it's more likely to be Shane McAdam for just, a pick in the 30s or something like that. The next rumour I wanted to talk about is another pretty much confirmed rumour as of recent times, and that is Liam Henry. The young Fremantle small or half forward or slash wingman. I don't really know which role he plays. He plays a number of different positions, I think. He has pretty much officially requested a trade out of Fremantle this off-season and has requested a trade back to Victoria. And by the sound of it, Fremantle are pretty ticked off by this trade request, and it seems to be a common occurrence with the Dockers. Every time, a player request a trade, they always get really ticked off, the Dockers. They really don't like losing players. But by some reports, it looks like, out of St Kilda and Hawthorn, it looks like St Kilda might be Liam Henry's preferred destination out of the two. But I think at the end of the day, Liam Henry just wants to get back to Victoria. So I think either St Kilda or Hawthorn would be a good fit. St Kilda would be a good fit, especially if they lose Jade Gresham. But nonetheless, I expect Liam Henry to be back at a Victorian club at the end of this off-season. Where that is, I don't really know. I think St Kilda are leading the race, according to some reports. But I expect it to be either St Kilda or Hawthorn. The next rumour that I've been hearing that has sort of, scoured the internet as of recent times is Sydney young gun Dylan Stephens, who has officially requested a trade out of the Harbour City this off-season. It's been reported that North Melbourne are the most likely team to grab Stephens this off-season. I feel like Dylan Stephens would be a really good pickup for North, obviously adding to a bit of outside class to a young midfield of the likes of Davies Uniacke and Jai Simpkin. I think he would really complement those guys because he's got great capability to be a really great wingman. And as we know, players who move clubs, who are often, on the outer of the best 22 at their own club, when they move to a new club, they often blossom, under, new opportunity or a new coach or a new game style. And I feel like that could happen with Dylan Stephens this off-season. So I fully expect Dylan Stephens to move to a team like North Melbourne this off-season. And the last trade rumour I wanted to discuss for today's video is Carlton winger slash half forward Zach Fisher, who I'll admit has sort of been on the outer at the Blues this season, that is. He sort of had his spot taken from him by the likes of Blake Acres and even Paddy Dow, who's sort of gotten in the side over him. Obviously, we know the Blues have a very stacked midfield now with the likes of Cripps, Walsh, Matthew Kennedy's broken into that side, George Hewitt's in there, Adam Chera's in there. Blake Acres has been a revelation for the Blues this year as well. Look, to be honest, I think this one's very similar to Dylan Stephens. I think Zach Fisher, he's sort of on the outer of the best 22 at the Blues. He may not even be in their best 22 when it's all fit and firing. Where do I think Zach Fisher will end up? Well, it was reported earlier on in the season that West Coast were interested in Zach Fisher, but since then that interest has actually cooled. And it now looks like North Melbourne will be the team to land Zach Fisher this off-season. It's reported that North Melbourne have offered Fisher, I think, a 4 or 5 year deal at worth about 550, 600,000 a season, which is pretty good for a player of Zach Fisher. I think that's very similar to what he's making right now at the Blues. And like I said, North Melbourne, they are really looking for, that bit of outside class to add to their already, pretty good young midfield with the likes of Davies Uniacke, Jai Simpkin, Bailey Scott, all these sort of guys. And to add, a player like Zach Fisher and potentially Dylan Stephens as well, that's a pretty good haul. And I'd be pretty happy with that if I was a North Melbourne supporter, adding a bit of class to your already, pretty good inside midfield. I think there's a chance he stays at Carlton, Fisher, but ultimately, I think the tempt of playing alongside or under Alistair Clarkson next year and playing, getting more opportunity next year is just going to be too good to refuse. And I think Zach Fisher will move clubs at the end of the 2023 AFL season. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those were a few little trade rumours and a big update as to what's going on ahead of the AFL trade period for 2023. Like I said, remember to comment down below some trade rumours that you guys have heard that I maybe didn't mention or missed. Nonetheless, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Remember to leave a like, share, and subscribe if you did go on to enjoy today's video and you enjoy this sort of trade content. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!